Hello, Yu-Gi-Oh players, and welcome to Yu-Gi-Oh! Business Casual. I am your host, the RJB0. So, it is Decks and Techs week, and I am bringing you guys all of my favorite deck profiles I'm going to be using between now and when Primal Origins comes out. A few of these decks are things that I'm considering using even after Primal Origins is out, because of a few cards that we are going to be getting. Unfortunately, some of the cards that I wanted to have available in my deck factory for you guys have not come in the mail yet, so I'm going to be giving you guys a few Dueling Network deck profiles, and one of those is my Dragon Ruler deck, my Mythic Ruler deck specifically. I love this deck. I adapted it as a version of the one that Admasu Williams brought to ARGCS. It's a great deck. I absolutely love it. I've tweaked it a ton, and I'm actually super excited for a card that was announced yesterday and has been talked about a ton today, Kuribandit. People have been talking about the Mathematician a lot recently, but this is the card I'm excited for, because I absolutely hate Card Trooper. Because whenever I mill something with Card Trooper, I get like 3 spells, and one of them is always Burial, and it annoys the hell out of me. However, with Kuribandit's really nice, because you can normal summon it during the end phase. You can mill 5 cards from your deck, or 4 cards from your deck, and you can pick out one of the spell and trap cards that are in there and add that to your hand. So you can reveal 5 cards from your deck, and maybe 4 of them will be dragons, and 1 of them will be Burial, and that would be amazing. So I absolutely love this card for this deck, and I'm going to be tweaking the deck around to fit this card because it is awesome. But until that comes out in the Dragons of Legend on April 25th, let's get down to the deck profile itself. First off, we have the 4 Dragon Rulers, the Kings of Sac. I really shouldn't have to explain to you guys why that's in there. Then we've got the 2 of each Mythic Dragon. I am considering running a 3rd Mythic Water Dragon. I haven't decided yet. I'm still kind of on the fence. Really depends on how this plays once I actually get the deck in real life, because it's very different testing on Dueling Network from actually going to a locals. But the 2 and 2 is really nice. They don't get cloggy. You can use one as like material for trade-in and then still have the other one be live. You're more likely to draw into them. It's just 2 and 2 is a really nice number. However, if I did want to add that 3rd trade-in, I might go for the 3rd Mythic Water Dragon, and you'll see why in a second. Then you've got your 2 targets for Tempest from the deck. Each dragon has a target besides itself. So if you banish a Redox, you can get Tree Dragon. If you banish Tidal, you can get Water Dragon. Tempest gets Debris and Influence Dragon, and then Blaster gets Flamvel Guard. Debris and Influence Dragon are really nice because they can each let you go into some of the power synchros. Debris allows you to go into Star Eater, which is really good. And Influence Dragon, of course, allows you to go into Leo with your Dragon Rulers. One thing that's nice about Debris Dragon is when you use it, you can bring back a Flamvel Guard, and then you can synchro for both an 8 and for the Star Eater during the same turn. And that's really good. Especially if the other thing is like a Stardust, because then they can't, destroy the Star Eater during, you guys get it. One of the other nice things about Debris is if you're in a really tough situation, you can bring back Mythic Tree Dragon and go for like an Exciton Knight or a Lavalval Chain earlier in the game to add some Dragon Rulers to your graveyard. Then you've got your Blue Eyes engine, the double white Stone of Legend, double Blue Eyes White Dragon. Once again, it's the same thing with the Mythic Dragons. It's not, the 2 and 2 is really nice. It doesn't get cloggy. You're less likely to draw into them. And you can just use Dragon Shrine to tutor them around. Send 1 Blue Eyes to the grave, get the other one to your hand with White Stone of Legend, things like that. Then, of course, you have your targets for Blaster. These are also targets for cards of Consonance. And you can use them for level 8 Synchros, which is really good, especially against Boojins, because Colossal Fighter, basically. Then you've got Card D, which is just another way to add cards to your hand to speed up the deck, just to increase the number of cards you have available as fuel for Dragon Rulers. And then the interesting tech that I'm running, Beast King Barbaros. I know, I'm going to get tons of flack for my running this card. However, hear me out. This was an idea from one of my friends at Dice Age. Beast King Barbaros is my current replacement for Card Trooper, because he doesn't mill my spell cards or my skill drains, and he's really good under skill drain. He's also a trade-in target. he is also fuel for Blaster, and one of the other really nice things about him is that he makes Water Dragon live. So if you have a Water Dragon in your hand and a Barbaros, then you can just put the Barbaros on the board, special summon the Water Dragon, and go into a Felgrand. He's also a colossal beater under Skill Drain, having 3,000 attack from a normal summon, which is something that you can't get these days in any deck, really. It's just a really great card. I absolutely love it. I do not regret running this card over Card Trooper. A lot of people are going to say I'm a bad player because it doesn't produce any inherent advantage on its own. But the amount of utility that you can get out of this deck based on being able to go for rank 8 Xyz, based on its ability to just beat your opponent down with Skill Drain on the board, or, you know, any number of things that you can do with your Beast King Barbaros. You know, if you really have to, you can summon Influence Dragon with him on the board and go for Star Eater. You know, you can just get so much utility out of the Barbaros that I do not regret running him, especially with Skill Drain at 3. Let's move on to the spell count, the obligatory triple Dragon Shrine. As long as Dragon Shrine is at 3, Skill Drain is at 3, and each of the Dragon Rulers is at 1, this deck is still live because you can just load up your dragons in your graveyard with Dragon Shrine, and it's just a spectacular card. Then you've got the triple MST. Admasu Williams did not run MST, and it ended up losing him. I mean, he didn't main deck MST, but it ended up losing him the match in his finals at ARGCS because his opponent put a Kaiser Coliseum on the board and he couldn't get around the darn thing and ended up losing. So I am maining triple MST because it hits the main deck Decree and Boojins. It hits things like Kaiser Coliseum. There are just too many important targets this format for MST that you cannot run them in the main, or you cannot not run them in the main deck. So I am running them over the upstart goblins that Admasu Williams ran. Then, speaking of draw power, I have switched around the triple cards of consonants and 1 trade-in for 2 trade-in and double cards of consonants. I actually, believe it or not, like my tuners better than my level 8 monsters. It always confused me that players were running more cards of consonants than trade-ins because you are more likely to use your tuners from your hand than you are to use your level 8. So it makes more sense to use your level 8s as discard fodder to draw than it does to use your tuners. Especially with the increased number of level 8s in here with Beast King Barbaros, it's nice to have the double trade-in. Once again, if I decided to run a 3rd Mythic Water Dragon to have the synergy with Beast King Barbaros, I would definitely run the 3rd trade-in in this deck because it's just got a dixzillion targets. And then, of course, you have your 2 utility cards, your Burial from the Different Dimension, which is basically a win condition, and your Gold Sark, which basically makes any of your Mythic Dragons live in your hand, because if you've got the Water Dragon, you can Gold Sark the Redox to get the Tree Dragon, and the other way around is true with Tidal. Then your trap lineup is triple Skill Drain, double Mirror Force, 1 Bottomless, 1 Warning, 1 Torrential. I have talked a lot about how Effect Negation is key, and this deck has Effect Negation with triple Skill Drain in the main deck. I do not need to worry about getting rid of my opponent's monsters during their main phase. I often even don't worry about getting rid of my opponent's monsters during the battle phase. I've talked to you guys before about Mirror Force theory, which is if you want to run Mirror Force in decks that can produce large enough amounts of monster removal on their own without trap cards, that you can put pressure on them so that they have to overextend, which is when you have your prime use for Mirror Force. And this deck can definitely do that. You want your opponent to try and overextend. You want to waste their resources so they try to go into battle. You want to put enough pressure on them for them to try and do that if you're going to run the double Mirror Force. And this deck can do that, especially with triple Skill Drain in the main deck. Let's move on to the side deck, which is once again pretty far departure from what Admasu Williams did. I am running double Maxi. It's good against the Mirror Match. It's good against Girgia. It's good against things like Madolche, other things like that. It's really nice to have the Maxi in the side deck, just because it gives me a better matchup against the faster decks, while I have other cards in here for the slower decks, like Snowman Eater. I was just considering this a while earlier. This is one of the techs that I want to talk about this week. This card is really good against Boojins, because if you set this and they're not expecting it, because who the hell runs Snowman Eater this format, if a Bujin player runs into that with their Yamato, the only thing they can do, really, is Crane. Because if they... I mean, and that's even a bad play because they're going to go at minus then. Because if they run the Yamato into this guy, they're not going to see it coming. So they're not going to use their hair. And they can't use their turtle during the damage step. So Snowman Eater basically beats their asses. And it's also nice because it's a debris target to go into Black Rose. It's also something that you can banish for title, and it's just really entertaining. It's a card that I've been enjoying a lot in those decks that main deck, or they normal summon a little more than they special summon, and it's nice to have that card that can just get around those tricks, that can get around things like Felgrand and stuff like that. Speaking of things that get around Felgrand, let's go to Fossil Dyna Pachycephalo. This is my side deck actually for post-Primal Origins. Fossil Dyna is amazing against the, the Artifact matchup, because you can just normal summon this guy, and like Frog Monarchs, when you've got a summon negator, a universal summon negator on the board against artifacts, then they can't do a whole lot. They can't Theosophy, they can't use their effect. They have to get rid of this card with a trap card, and that's where your MSTs come in. You're also your Malcats. So this card is really amazing. You can also just set it if your opponent has a really good board, and then they can attack into it, thinking that it's going to be like a Flamvelguard or something, trying to defend yourself. And then you flip it over and you destroy their entire board. It's a really good card. It's also really helpful against the Evil Swarm matchup, which is another good thing about Snowman Eater. Then, of course, you have one Thunder King Ryo because it's good against Fire Fist. It's good against Girgia. It's good against basically anything that really relies on special summons from the extra deck and searches from the deck. Then you've got a Dark Hole. Takes on the Girgia matchup. It takes on problem cards like Leo. It takes on Constellar Pleiades, things like that. You've got a Twister because that's my 4th MST. I don't want to run Dust Tornado because the decks that you're going to be really siding this in against are things that run Decree anyway. So Dust Tornado isn't very good. And then you have your trap lineup, which is the double Divine Wrath. It's good in a lot of matches. I couldn't justify putting it in the main deck, because if you've got Skill Drain in the main deck, then there are a lot of decks that you really can't, that you really don't need that much effect negation for. Like, for instance, Fire Fist. You don't want to have Divine Wrath in your main deck. Something like Harpies, you don't want Divine Wrath in your main deck because it's going to die. A lot of decks, Divine Wrath isn't necessarily going to help you in the main deck. However, in the side deck, it's freaking amazing because it takes down Mermails, it takes down Bujins, it takes down basically everything that activates effects. And the nice thing about it is a little bit of Dragon Ruler theory here. Any card whose only cost is to discard a dragon monster. So if you've got a dragon monster in your hand and you activate Divine Wrath, you aren't losing anything, because that card is still live fuel for your Dragon Ruler. So if you Divine Wrath, that's just a free negation that gets around Forbidden Lance, it gets around all sorts of monster effects and things like that. So Divine Wrath is really good. Then you've got 2 Light Imprisoning Mirrors, once again for the Artifact matchup, not necessarily against the Bujin matchup, because really in the matchup against Bujins, it's really going to be a fight for how often you can keep your skill drains on the board, not necessarily how many effect negators you have. It's just all about taking down those decrees. But against artifacts, the Light Imprisoning Mirror is fairly critical. I am considering running something like Forbidden Graveyard that allows me to discard from my hand to block everything for a turn, but this card seems to be a good default in the meantime. And then finally, you've got the double Malcat. This is really good against Girgia. It's also extremely good against artifacts. Just a lot of good decks that are taken down by Malevolent Catastrophe because they set a lot of cards traditionally. It's nice for taking down Evil Swarms because they'll attack with that Ophion. You can take out their back row, and then all you really require to take down the Ophion is something like a Fossil Dyna, a Dark Hole, or a Blaster from hand with a Flamvelguard. So that's the side deck. The extra deck's fairly self-explanatory. You've got your Black Rose, your level 8 Synchros, your Leo, your Scotch Star Eater, and then your double Felgrand, and you want the double Mecha Phantom Beast Dragasac because these two are the most important cards in your extra deck. I run the Lavalval Chain like Admasu Williams did, because you can debris into the Mythic Tree Dragon if you have that in the graveyard early game. to get some more Dragon Rulers in your grave. Of course, the Exciton Knight, and that's pretty much the deck. So I hope you guys liked this deck profile. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. If you didn't, let me know why in the comment section below. And of course, subscribe for more decks discussion, analysis, and general Yu-Gi-Oh! Shenanigans. Meanwhile, thank you guys for watching Yu-Gi-Oh! Business Casual. I am your host, the RJB0, and I got a jet.